Welcome to Life at the Museum from the Kids in Museums Youth Panel. I'm Mohammed. Dust off your ideas of what a museum is and join me and the rest of the youth panel as we explore museum life behind the glass. Future-focused conversations bridging the gap between young people and old institutions, from career tips to climate activism. What can museums offer young people today, and how can we shake things up? In this episode, Chloe's at the National Maritime Museum to learn more about one of the sector's most exciting and extensive youth programs. Over to you, Chloe.
I've just arrived at the Maritime Museum and we've come up the stairs to the main kind of foyer with galleries coming off of it and of course the cafe. It's a really massive, light, airy space. The entire roof is glass, so you can see the sky and the clouds. Inside the hall there's a wall of maybe 20 ship figureheads looking over of all different shapes and sizes. There's one that's a bird, there's a harlequin and a mermaid, and there's just a general kind of hum of visitor life. I'm here today at the National Maritime Museum with Katie Cassels and Rachel Dunlop. Katie, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Katie, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Families and Young People Manager at the National Maritime Museum, which means that I look after the programmes for anyone aged 0 up to 24 years and think about all the aims and ambitions that we have for our audiences within that age range as we move forward.
Fantastic, thank you. And Rachel?
I'm Rachel, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Youth Projects producer here at the Maritime Museum. And that means I produce the youth programme for young people aged 13 to 24, which is part funded by Charlton Athletic Community Trust.
Thank you. And Katie, how have you found yourself here in the museum world?
It's a very good question. So I've been at the National Maritime Museum for 5 years, where I've worked with families and young people. But before that, I was at the National Trust, where I started off as a waitress in the cafe, which put me in a really good position to just see what was going on. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I knew I sort of wanted to work with people. I'd been a Brownie leader since I was about 16 and I liked working with children. But I also liked objects and I couldn't decide whether I wanted to work with people or objects, two very different roles. Mm-hmm. And it was while I was in the cafe that I was able to figure out what those different jobs meant. You know, what is a learning officer and what is a collections officer? And was able to sort of speak with the people doing those jobs to figure it out, which was at the point that I realised that really I wanted to work with people, not objects. And ended up managing to get a role at the same organisation, working with families, schools, young people, communities and adults. And it's a very small team doing everything on the engagement side.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's really cool that as a waitress you got to see all of the brilliant things that were happening, as well as, I hope, eat some of the scones and cakes.
Oh, of course.
And Rachel, I was going to say, did you follow the same path? But I can't imagine there are many people that were also waitresses at the National Trust. And
No, never worked at the National Trust. Yeah, if you're recruiting. No. So my path's quite different. So I grew up in rural Northern Ireland, and there's not a lot of museums or sort of access to like arts and culture there. So I always use like art as an escape for myself. And that's what I went and did at university, and then panicked when I had an art degree, like what do I do now? So I started working with young people because I felt really passionate. Like I didn't really have many opportunities growing up, so could I support young people to have opportunities? Because I really felt the impact of art firsthand. So I was freelancing. I worked in Wales for a long time. Running art schools on canal boats and on mountaintops and on train station platforms. And then I moved to London and I've been freelancing a little bit, and this is my first museum job. So completely new to sort of working with young people within a museum context, but it's been a really great opportunity to learn about collections and how young people can sort of take ownership of those.
Amazing. I love it. You come from mountains and train stations and you've ended up at the National Maritime Museum.
Yeah.
Rachel, you've only been at the museum for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you still find new things in the museum every time you walk through the galleries. But if you were going to bring someone new to the museum, what is the first object you'd want to go and show them?
The very first object, I suppose, I don't know if it is an object as such, but I would show them the Great Map, because that is sort of, for anyone that's not been to the museum before, we've got a huge glass domed roof, and the Great Map is a huge map. I think, is it like, how wide is it? About 60 foot? Bit wider. And that is where people really meet. That seems to be the focal point of the museum. Meet you at the Great Map, have coffee on the Great Map. There's little boats that kids can play on, and you can pull them around. That's where a lot of massive events take place. Loads of different communities have takeovers on the Great Map. And there's everything from dancing, singing, opera, runway shows, light festivals. Yeah, that's just the real kind of heart of the museum for me. So that's where I show people first.
Yeah, it's a really lovely space, isn't it? As you say, as we walked through, there was a child kind of pushing themselves along on this boat, and it is a nice little social hub, isn't it?
Mm.
Plus, I really like going to a museum and heading straight for coffee.
Yeah. Great cakes as well. Just yeah.
Awesome. And Katie, you've been here a little bit longer.
I have.
So I'm sure you know all the little tiny hidden gems in the collection. Where would you take someone?
So my favourite gallery is the See Things Gallery, which opened in 2018 and acts as a bit of a launch pad to the rest of the museum. It's a gallery with the most objects on display of any of our galleries, with everything from ship's badges to my favourite object, which is the oldest object in the museum collection, an Egyptian funerary barge. And we use that with a lot of our engagement programmes for SEND learners doing object handling in that gallery as well. So that's my first gallery and my favourite object.
Oh, fantastic. My favourite object, I think is in the same gallery, is the statue of a girl guiding head, like the bust of a girl guide. And it's by Eve Shepherd, so it's quite a modern object in comparison to your ancient Egyptian boat. But it's a really striking statue of this teenager who's looking proudly over to the side. You can see she's got a girl guiding badge kind of pinned under her collar, which tells us a hidden history, I suppose, of the Girl Guides' resistance to the Nazi regime in Guernsey. But apart from that, I just love that it really emphasises how welcome young people are in the museum. Mm-hmm. There's literally a statue of a young person in the museum, and I think that's so fantastic. The museum is doing so much for different groups of young people. You have a very popular work experience programme and summer programmes, and then shorter engagement like school visits. I used to volunteer on the Live Learn work programme, so I've seen firsthand kind of how inspiring and empowering that programme can be. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that programme works?
Yeah, absolutely. So Living Learning Working is one of our school programmes for young people with additional needs. So they will come to the museum over 3 weeks, and they work with a SEND specialist to think about the environment that work happens in. So we use the museum as a moment to think about customer service, to think about what kind of jobs are in the museum, but equally to then allow the young people to engage with the handling collection, pick an object that they really like, and to build up to then sharing that with the public in the gallery. We've recently taken it a step further as well. So under that programme, those young people come with their school, and it's a very, very held sessions. We now have a young object handling volunteer programme, which invites those young people to come back after Living, Learning, Working to focus on building their confidence in the gallery, leading object handling with the public. So they'll be paired up with a mentor who will help ensure they feel confident talking to people, will be there in case there's something that young person isn't comfortable answering, for when the public invariably ask about where the loos are and the cafe. And the whole point of that programme is that those young people can have a really focused, dedicated time to build their confidence, to build their skills, and to have, I guess, a sort of work experience type opportunity to talk about beyond school when they finish at school. And that's also helping us try and support young people once they've left education, when there's often quite a drop-off in support for young people with additional needs. So we're trying to really fill that gap a little bit more.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And the Maritime Museum was nominated recently for a Kids in Museums Most Accessible Museum because of things like your SEN programme. There are the obvious things that you see as you come in as a visitor. There's lots of benches to sit down, there's places to stop and rest. What else have you got? What else is in the museum that makes it accessible to people like that?
Friendly staff, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have champions within the front of house team who often have lived experience of disability themselves or of supporting someone living with a disability. So they ensure that the rest of the team are really supportive and welcoming and know how to direct people to useful resources and useful spaces. We also have a set of pre-visit resources that were created in consultation with some of our local audiences, so things like a visual guide. We've got sensory maps as well. Internally, we have a staff network that is made up of staff with different disabilities, and they advise us as well on some of those resources and making the museum a much better space. We're also really lucky to have a changing places facility, which makes a huge difference for a lot of our audiences, enabling them to visit us for a longer period of time. And we've started looking for gaps in our facilitated provision as well. So in the last year, we've launched Sensory Sailors, which supports families with children under 13 with special educational needs and disabilities. And at the Prince Philip Maritime Collection Centre, there's a session called the Sensory Social Club, which focuses on providing a social space for, again, those young people who've left education and are looking for a social place to build their peer network, whilst being inspired by the museum collections, of course. Do you want to talk a bit about Saturday Art Club?
Yeah, so just to say as well, we run a programme called Saturday Art Club, which is a programme run by a facilitator, an artist, that works with young people every Saturday through October to April. And it's a really diverse group of young people, and there are a lot of young people with special educational needs who come with their support worker. And we've got an assistant who supports those young people as well. And that gives young people a free opportunity to work towards a Bronze Arts Award qualification, which is often a charged for opportunity. So we're really lucky to be able to offer that for free as part of our programme, which is funded by Charlton Athletic, or part funded by Charlton Athletic. So I feel like I should mention that there. And that's a really great opportunity where young people can meet others. There's a lot of young people who are experiencing social anxiety, especially at the moment, and they build networks. They get to develop their skills, meet other people, also have interactions with adults beyond education, which I think is really important for that sort of 14, 15, 16-year-old age range. And they also show their work at a national exhibition at Somerset House each year. So we take them as a group and they have a graduation ceremony and they go up and get certificates, and their work is in a sort of very prestigious gallery. So that's an incredible opportunity.
That's amazing. That's really cool. So it's clear that through the museum you're building these skills like confidence and relationships, but actually you've also got these really specific skills being built that boost employability and boost kind of relationship building?
I would say that's like a massive part of the youth programme around confidence building, skills development, that sort of professional development, not only for the museum and cultural sector, but like wider, like what are the sort of transferable skills? And that is what young people are asking us for. They feel they've really missed out on opportunities, especially given what's happened in the last couple of years. And this sort of time of intersecting crises between like climate emergency, Black Lives Matter, cost of living. There's all these pressures on young people to really make their time valuable and what they do count. And we want to be able to like shape the programme around that need and those interests.
Yeah, museums are in such a good position to offer out that support and that skills building in a really interesting way. Rachel, can you tell me about the Young Creatives Rethink Presidency?
Yeah, sure. So Young Creatives is a project that we run 3 times a year. So in the February half term, October half term, and then we run a programme in the summer. It's for young people aged 12 to 15 or 15 to 18, depending on what time of year it is. And the idea is that young people work alongside professional artists and facilitators to really improve skills, have some experience of working within the museum, respond to collections and items, and develop work for their portfolios or however they'd like to express their creativity. And the Rethink residency takes place once a year, and they work with artists. So in July 2022, they worked with an artist called Charlotte Grayland, who works across visual art and sound. So sound is her main focus of her practice. And Charlotte worked with the group to explore the museum through sound, zines, printmaking, photography, all sorts. Basically, it's like a sort of it's like an intensive art school in the museum, I would say. And the group were fantastic. They just flew with this idea of like making memories from items in the collection, and they came up with the idea of making a set of instructions for visitors that they read out over the tannoy. So they went around and they observed visitors to the gallery, and they said, "Oh, why does everyone take photographs of pictures without looking at them? Let's say that they can't do that." And then they said, like, we should get like people to try and interact with each other. And they made these sort of like quite, I don't know, quite comical set of instructions. So they had one that was like ride a cannon. And the managers were like, no, I don't think that's going to fly. Actually, we'll have to take that one out. But look at every painting, use the exhibition as a catwalk. What else was there? Hum, sing in the galleries as loud as you want. So ideas around challenging what sort of museum visitors should be, because there's this idea that you come in and you have to be very quiet and you have to walk around with your hands around the back, or like put your hand over your chin to look very thoughtful. And they wanted to challenge those things. Yeah. And they also came up with a set of questions which is kind of installed in the museum at the moment that invites visitors to respond to those questions. So there's questions around, do you feel proud of the British Empire? Like quite challenging, provocative questions. Do you feel like there are enough women represented in the collection? Do you see yourself represented in the collection? Do you think there's enough on offer for you here? So it's this idea that the visitors can come in and respond to the young people's the questions that they've answered. So there's a series of artworks and then these questions on display in the Rethink space, which is on the ground floor of the Maritime.
That's really cool. It sounds very disruptive in the best possible way, and playful, and I hope makes the museum feel fun and welcoming in a way which it is, but perhaps isn't perceived as being that way.
Yeah, I think I really like that you use the word disruptive. I mean, that's got like positive and negative connotations, right? But I do sort of feel like the youth programme can be a little bit disruptive because you're really trying to advocate for what the young people want, and that is their voice. So we're trying to like put that into the programme as much as possible. And the museum staff have been amazing with that sort of buy-in around letting some of these things happen, like doing that tannoy takeover where they read all the instructions and the visitors were like, what is going on?
Did people know it was going to happen?
No. So it was unannounced, and everyone was just looking like really like what is going on? Because I guess once you hear a tannoy, you're just expecting like a lost child or a tour starting in 10 minutes, or so it is sort of that disruption. And the young people got a lot out of that week. So yeah, they've had their work in a national museum, at the age of kind of 15, 16, which again is a really, I think, quite amazing achievement.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant that the museum is accepting these changes and going along with the challenges that the young people present, because really museums will need to carry on, and every generation of young people that comes will change how we exist in the world and how we exist in museums. That's really cool. Working with an artist like that, where you can build those relationships and really kind of work closely together, must be really inspiring and creating lots of new opportunities.
Yeah, and I think because Charlotte's practice was so multidisciplinary, there was a chance for young people to try different things. But I think what's amazing about working in an intensive week like that is you can kind of see some young people really like taking on some mediums and flying with them. So like really into illustration, or really into writing, or really into zine making, or whatever it might be. And there was one young person who wasn't really into the sort of drawing, or I think she maybe felt that she wasn't good enough at drawing, although that's like another discussion, isn't it? And Charlotte supported her to take a digital camera and use it for the first time, like a really nice DSLR. And that kit like that is so expensive, and a lot of young people don't have access to that in sort of every day. And she loved that. That was like, I think, really an amazing opportunity for her, because she sort of became the project photographer. So every morning, and then she would come in and she'd say, can I have the camera? So she was kind of taking that initiative and that ownership over it. And then we used a lot of her work in the final sort of show, and there were all her photographs. And she just had a very natural eye for it. And I think those like little journeys are really lovely to see when you do this type of work.
Yeah, it's amazing how you've listened to the young person and actually adapted to suit them, and you've created some beautiful things, or that young person has created beautiful things from that.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the challenges of the work that puts young people at the forefront?
Some of the challenges, I would say limited resources. So that, like, when I talk about that, I mean sort of funding that we have, and within the organisation, I think especially given COVID, a lot of teams are stretched, and that was some of the first things that we saw go right, was sort of learning and engagement teams. And I do think there is a stretch to do as much as we can with limited resources. So I think that's always something that we come up against. In terms of like the young people themselves, like I'm like the museum, like we really want to pay young people for their time to get them to and from the museum safely. So like thinking about like transport bursaries, paying them for their attendance, providing food, that's been a big thing when we've been consulting with young people, and like healthy choices as well. Reaching the right young people that will really benefit, so not only just the sort of usual suspects as such, or those who, maybe reaching more young people who would really benefit from the opportunities. And we've got work to do on that, definitely. I think that's just always going to be an ongoing process. Making sure that young people's voices, young people's voice is genuinely heard, I think is often a challenge. But making sure that that's at the core of projects, and that they're genuinely collaborative and co-produced. I think partly funding, partly cycles of things and being busy. Sometimes it's very easy to plan projects and then think about getting 10 young people to a programme. So really trying to like flip that and consult with young people and put them in the planning stages, consult with them about the programming, and sort of shifting that to be a bit more, I guess the project's being a bit more long term in that way too. And then I think the thing around like balance, like of course professional development skills are really important, and we know that when people are pressed to spend their time wisely, thinking about their futures, but also having that balance of just being able to come to the museum and have a good time, have fun, meet new friends. I think that's a massive thing. But it's that sort of balance between joy and sort of thinking about their future. So keeping all those things in mind, I think those are the sort of main challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about the future is quite stressful, and young people are bombarded a lot with things like, do this project and it will look great on your CV, and do this project. And actually sometimes you just need a space for joy and for playfulness, and that will help your well-being, and ultimately it will kind of improve those employability skills anyway, but that's a bit of a bonus, whereas the focus sometimes needs to just be on the playfulness and, you know, taking over a tannoy in a museum and telling people to sing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, like something that's come through from consultation is young people really like routine as well, like creative routine. So I think that's somewhere that our programs can offer, is like you come on a Saturday morning and you know you're going to have 3 hours of making clay structures or, I don't know, listening devices or whatever it might be. Yeah. But it's that sort of routine that's beyond school or work or caring responsibilities or...
Yeah, and I think the other challenge is then that after a project, what's next? Like, how can we maintain that relationship with that young person? How can we signpost them to future opportunities that, you know, in some cases maybe that is you've volunteered with us, here's paid work, or once you've done that paid work, here's something else that, you know, is going to help you achieve what you are trying to achieve. And so often, again, sort of links to the funding cycles, that you end up finishing a project and it's on to the next one, and you don't have the space to be able to offer the 20 young people you've worked with all these additional opportunities. And I think that's where museums better connecting with other organisations around them, whether they're museums or you know, something from a totally different sector, really has scope to benefit the young people that we're working with.
So if I could wave my magic wand and make all of the problems and challenges disappear, what would you hope to see in the museum?
Can you wave it?
You know what? I think I left it at home today. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you knew you were coming here. That's a good question. I think for me, it's putting more resource. That's what we want to do with the programme long term. Putting more resource directly to young people. We've been piloting ways of doing that. So, for example, through our youth collective, we pay young people to come and participate, and they take over the museum for an evening. So this year they did it was called Descending the Runway. It was like a multicultural fashion show. And they laid out a 60-foot red carpet on the Great Map.
Amazing.
And that was a paid-for opportunity, which I think was really beneficial. And thinking about ways to involve young people in all areas of sort of not just programming, but sort of more internally at those sort of higher up levels, involving young people in recruitment processes. So when we're like bringing new facilitators, we pay young people to like sit on the panel and gain that experience and feed into devising exercises for the artists to deliver. So thinking about ways that young people's voice can be more visible in the programming, I think, and giving them more money. And I think there's a lot of work that we would like to do around engagement and making sure that we're reaching people, because we sit in a massive building and I actually don't get to spend as much time outside in communities as I would like. So actually working with young people to be advocates within our communities, I think could be really powerful, and paying them to do that, because I think that's what young people want to hear is, like, I mean, if I say something's cool and they should come along, that's not necessarily going to make them want to sign up. But if their pal does, that's a different thing, isn't it? Because it's that trust that those people already have. That's really vital for us to foster, I think. Did you want to add anything to that, Katie?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, what I would really love to see is much more visibility of young people in the museum, and by that I mean their efforts and their work that they're producing during projects and as a result of work experience and all the different elements that come under that youth programme, so that it doesn't feel like they're coming and they're doing an intensive programme and at the end of it they're taking it away with them, but what's the mark on the organisation? I'd really like all the outputs to feel like they are making change in the organisation, and being seen by our visitors so that they know that young people have a voice and a valued voice at this organisation. And I think there's been a shift, and we are starting to see that more. The Rethink presidency is one example, that their work is up for 6 months before a school's work goes up for the other part of the year. But that's one project, and we do so many more projects and engage so many other young people across the year. And they're the participants and the visitors who have really interesting perspectives on the world around them and on what they want to see in society and in the museum going forward. And we're an organisation about the oceans, for instance, and yet where's the young people's voice about the climate crisis? And that's an area where we may not have experts on the climate crisis internally, but we're in the perfect position to coordinate those experts and those young people to have those conversations in a space that isn't school, and allows a creative response to these challenges that they're facing. So there's definitely still a lot of work to do to ensure that there's buy-in for that across the whole organisation, and that everyone sees the value of putting those voices front and centre.
Yeah, and I think that's it. You've both kind of talked about the value, making sure that young people are valued and compensated for their time in terms of actual money, but also valued in terms of they are given the credit that they're due for that, and kind of their experience and interest is reflected even more so in the museum.
Yeah, for a long time we've talked about expertise not being a PhD and a qualification. You can have expertise from your lived experiences, and we value that from our communities. But are we translating that to young people and saying, actually, your experience as a young person in this borough, in London, in the UK, is an expertise that we do not have, and that we can learn from.
And passing that through to the visitors as well. We've talked mostly about young people, and we've not talked so much about the general public who come in. And I think it would be really interesting to see museums that not only value the young people and make the young people feel valued, but shout loud and proud to the visiting public about how important and how impactful the young people have been.
Definitely. You're the future, right? So, it makes sense, doesn't it? We have to, as well as we've got a responsibility to provide opportunities, but also sort of platform your voices. Sort of like thinking about those inclusive practices going forward. Yeah, there's a lot to do, isn't there, if you could wave your magic wand. But I suppose it's also making sure that young people get to do what they want.
Yeah.
That's at the heart of it, I suppose.
So my last question for you then is, what advice would you give teenagers and young people, or if you want maybe a young you, what advice would you give teenagers about engaging with a museum? So that might be, career advice, or it might be a tip for how you engage or interact when you're at a museum.
So my tip would be to ask the question, reach out. Organisations, particularly teams working with visitors and working with young people, are really happy to have a conversation. If you want to know what's going on, if you've got an idea and you don't know if it's something that could have legs and you would like to see if an organisation would buy into it, just contact someone. Everyone I've ever encountered in engagement and participation teams are always looking for ideas, if nothing else, but always really want to hear from audiences and from young people in particular. So just reach out, send an email, pick up the phone, whatever you're comfortable doing.
Great tip.
That's a great tip.
Rachel?
Yeah, my tip would be to go somewhere even if you're intimidated. So I do still get intimidated by quite big galleries and museums, and I've got like a degree in like art, and it's one of those things, once you go, it's great, but I think it can be quite intimidating if you don't think it's for you. But it is for you. The objects are for all of us. Most museums are free, so make use of it, and like make use of the space even as a social space for somewhere to go and meet friends or hang out for a few hours. For somewhere with free Wi-Fi. So yeah, it's like you don't have to see everything when you go somewhere, but yeah, sort of push through that intimidation, and once you're there, it is good.
That's a really good tip. And as I arrived here today, you've got the beautiful front of the museum, but it's enormous and it is a little bit intimidating.
Looks like a government building.
It does. And as we approached, I was feeling a little bit nervous about going in. And as soon as I was in the door, a member of staff was like, "Hello, welcome to the museum." It's so lovely when you get in the door and you push past it. Thank you so much. It's been really lovely talking to you. I'm so excited to keep an eye on what happens at the museum, because it sounds like there's loads of brilliant things going on. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to our guests for taking the time to speak with us, and thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, there are several more in the playlist featuring some really interesting museums. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends and your families, and we hope to see you again. And for those aged 16 to 25, we would like to extend an invitation for our upcoming Youth Summit, an event designed and delivered by young people for young people. The Future is Now Museum Youth Summit is a space where peers can discuss the future of young people's works in the heritage sector, with opportunities to network and plenty of coffee breaks in between. If that sounds interesting, you can find more information through the link in the description below.